G'day, I'm David, and this week we're at the Australian launch of the Geely Starray EM-I. It's a medium-sized SUV, and it comes with a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle powertrain. Now, this is the second vehicle that Geely has introduced onto the Australian market. Not long ago, they put on their EX5, and it's in the same class, but it is a full battery electric vehicle. So I had a nice chat with their design guru, or one of them, who said that there's a big difference between innovation and exaggeration. And I think that's an important point because, yes, we're at a launch and there's a degree of hyperbole and show and tell in a very bright manner. But this car comes with a balance that understands that it's got good technical development, but it has that approach that understands and makes it quite easy, not perfect, but quite easy for the owner to operate in a safety and a relatively calm manner. So what we'll do is we'll have a look around the outside of the vehicle. We'll go inside, both the space and the technology and how it communicates to the driver. We'll have a look at the powertrain and then, of course, what it's like to drive on the road. But first, let's just go through a few features of what Geely thinks will make this car special in its class. From a design point of view, electric vehicles have created a number of opportunities, and the main one is to build a car without a grille on the front. But this is a plug-in hybrid, so it still has an internal combustion engine. And so they've still managed, though, to do away with the grille here, but you do have some ventilation down low. And quite often you see that in a full battery electric vehicle because it wants to cool the battery when necessary. But they've pursued this in this car, even though it is a hybrid. The other thing about the front is that, of course, modern lighting means that you no longer need the big round lights. They've well and truly gone. And you can have slender lights, and you can also start doing features across the front. And certainly they've done that. But you notice from the front, it's not over angular. You remember that comment about exaggeration? The style people can often talk about the concern about following a trend too heavily, which is just a short-term trend rather than a long-term legacy. And I think that's where they're aiming here. We have rounded pieces, a little bit of sculptured feature here on the bonnet, but overall, and perhaps these are quite strong, this panel here as well, but overall it is a view that is not necessarily going to extreme. One might think of, say, the Toyota CHR as an example, but it's representing the case and making the statement about electrification.
If you value independent journalism or simply enjoyed the video, please support the channel by hitting like and subscribe.
The side of the vehicle doesn't go over the top again. Again, you look at waist lines, there's not a very strong line, but there is quite an indentation here. And I think that has value in terms of when you see the car in an environment, it reflects that environment in a different way, not just as a straight mirror. And as a straight mirror can make it look a bit bland down the side. Wheels are important. This is a 19-inch tyre and they're 50 profile. That's not quite as low profile as some, and I like that. If you get far too low a profile, I think you get more noise and vibration, or potential vibration, and you tend to, while it handles better, it's not as comfortable to my mind. So pretty good in that regard. Down the side, it doesn't really try to be much different. It does have a few things here that help airflow, but they're not prominent. It does have a bit of a wing there. They're not going out of their way to be strangely different. Nonetheless, presenting a whole package. The style guru said that the teardrop shape is really the most efficient, but it's not really very good for people inside. So this has a CD, coefficient of drag, of about 0.288, I think they said. You can get them lower, but you compromise interior space enormously to do it. So it's better, it's not bad, it's an evolution, but it's an evolution with balance for what the customer needs. So the back doesn't strive to be greatly different. There's almost a little bit of the rounded look of a Genesis, perhaps some even say a Porsche in some regards, with the wing at the back. And of course, the most distinctive feature is being able to light up across the back here, 360 little reflectors and lights and so on together. One of the reasons you might do that is that you want people coming up behind to say, oh, what's that car? You don't want them to say, oh, that's ugly, but just that it's different enough. Not greatly different, and it's fairly smooth lines generally. Inside, it is a 5-seater, and being the upmarket version, it has the tailgate. Now that's some pretty good room in there, and plenty of anchor points for young children. Seats, no spare tyre. That's the tragedy. It has a kit there and it provides plenty of room. The other thing about it is it's just two-wheel drive, the front wheels, so you're not got a motor in the back in order to take some of the space. You're compromising what some may see as the great performance potential of electric cars, or at least hybrid cars, but it again errs on the side of being useful for the customer. One of the most misused words, I think, in press releases and other publicity is the word seamless. And it's often used to say that getting into this car, one assumes they're inferring that it just flows in no matter what your past experience. I think the advent of a lot of new technology has made them not very seamless in some ways. Two ways in particular, which I think the Starray does well. And one is the blend of the internal combustion engine with the electric motor and how that works. The other is the communication from the screens in particular and the buttons that are around you within the car. Some have gone so far with the screens that I find it almost distressing to drive. Some are at the point where you can get in and say, with a little bit of adaptation, I can learn and become comfortable with this car. I think the Starray is pretty close to a good balance in that regard. A few things that might improve, and of course it doesn't have a spare tyre. There are things like that some may find a little disconcerting. But in terms of evolution, in terms of innovation rather than exaggeration, I think the Geely Starray EM-I is doing a good job. It adjusted automatically. Now, I can adjust it and save it, which I particularly like. Now, one of the things that I think electric vehicles are really good, and this is a great example, there's a beautiful sun out there and can get a bit hot, but we've left the car going with the air conditioning and it's making no noise because it's running on battery. It's not making any pollution sound as well. I think that that's a great potential for electric vehicles and to a degree for plug-in hybrids. General feel of the car is quite good. It's not sports car. You turn into the corner and you feel that electric steering a bit. The first bit is not bad, but it's got enough weight to it that I feel comfortable with. The lane keep assist works pretty well. It does tend to give a little bit of a, not suddenness, but it's not quite as smooth as the class-leading examples, but it's certainly not as bad as some, and I'd be happy to turn it on and leave it on. Every click moves you down 5k, but it's very hard then to set it to 1 or 2k's. And I don't do that to try and push the limits. I do that to try and not get into what I call the CCC. That's the cruise control creep, where I've set it on 80 and I'm really doing 77. The guy behind set it on 80 and he's really doing 78. So he feels the need to overtake. And by overtaking, he then crawls past at the bare minimum of difference in speed. Or if you're following somebody, you don't want to sit right up close so that the adaptive cruise control's working, but you don't want them to get away. So you want to be able to set the speed at exactly what they're doing. So I like to have that control. The amount of information in front of me here is, well, it's pretty small font. So if you need reading glasses, you're going to have multifocals to see ahead and to see down here. The screen here was big, and it's nice that it's very tall. It's more than 15 inches in diameter, but it's got some tallness to it, which I think is good for maps, because typically maps will move the map around to show you that you're travelling in that direction, and it's good to be able to have some space to be able to see ahead. So a tall one's good. Some people find them distracting. I quite like them. They also have buttons. Well, it's not buttons. It's still a touch screen, but they are clearly identified for climate control. And so I don't have to go into the screen, select climate, select things and so on. I can press one button to change the fan speed. So I can adjust a number of things quite quickly, and I like that. I like the fascia here, this actual style here, rather than that highly reflective, almost Bakelite style, which I think shows fingerprints. That this with those lines there, I think makes it less bland in a way, but without being gaudy. The standard setup for the steering wheel controls is cruise control on the left, a couple of buttons for favourites, voice and choosing different styles, and then the volume and that on the right. The main limitation of an internal combustion engine is that it relies a lot on a particular rev range. You need some revs, 1500 to 2000, really to get going, and then it peaks out at about 6000, and the amount of power you get varies quite significantly over that range. And it's not a great range, and so therefore you need to have a gearbox. Now, an electric motor, and this one will go from 0 to 18,000 revs per minute, and it gets its maximum power at 0. So it's fantastic for taking off. In fact, it's so fantastic, and it can so hold it. It gets a bit breathless, well, a bit wheezy in the higher revs. It's not quite as strong as an internal combustion engine, but you're talking about revs that are now into the illegal speed area. The thing then is, because it's so good from 0, most power at 0, you don't need a gearbox. And so an electric vehicle, all the ones I've driven, have just one drive, one ratio. And this is the same. The great thing about the hybrid, and this is an important point, is that it does particularly well in urban environments. Now, the limitation of the just internal combustion engine is that stopping and starting and slowing down, it just keeps going and uses energy. An electric vehicle is better at stopping and starting, more efficient, doesn't have to warm up, and it allows to get some regenerative power. Now, Toyota has pushed that so to the point, though, that their hybrids, I drove a Camry the other day, the fuel consumption in rural areas was rated at about 4 litres per 100. That means you probably get 4.5 to 5. But its urban figure was rated at 4 litres per 100. That's staggeringly good. A normal internal combustion engine can use 15 to 20% more fuel per distance travelled in urban areas. So this is selling with a great range. It's rated at 943 kilometres. Fairly accurate. Obviously, you need to consider that as a more general number. Let's say 900, 920 plus, if you're lucky. How well the battery and the internal combustion engine work together in a hybrid is absolutely critical. The battery's big enough and the motor is good enough for it to operate on its own as an electric vehicle. In this case, they say that's rated up to 83 kilometres. But the great value of that is that's not 83 kilometres from 0 charge to 100%. They most specifically set the system so it doesn't go below 20% charge. And that's really important. The reason being that if you let the battery run out and you're driving and you've got no charge in the battery and you need to have a bit of firm acceleration, passing a truck in dual lanes going up a hill, you want to have that extra help from the electric motor. And if you're only running one gear, then if you don't have the electric motor to help, there ain't no way the one gear internal combustion engine is going to give you great performance. So at no stage on the long drive did I get to the point where this had less than 25 kilometres in the battery. But even now that I've hopped in it and I've let it idle for a long time, it has gone low. So now the system is working hard to make sure it charges the battery. Even though it's gone low, there seems to be still enough for me to get some pretty good throttle response. If you're operating it as a normal car and you're not leaving it to be idling or just using the battery, in fact, if you choose the mode that says battery only and it gets down to 20%, the vehicle will say, no, I know what you want to do, but we've got to work together because I'm not going to let that battery get low. It seems to me that because we've been idling, I'm still down to 0 kilometres on the battery. So if I try and take off from here, now you hear the engine's revving, but it's not getting to just drive the wheels. It's a bit like a diesel electric locomotive. It's generating power for the battery. Now, I didn't think that was bad acceleration. Now, without a lot of battery power, the engine works hard, and it certainly doesn't give you that punch in the back that you would expect from a full battery electric vehicle. The noise of the engine then makes it difficult to assess just how quick you're going. Now you notice that I just went over the registered 80 kilometres an hour. Now, I think I'm still legal because of the general factor of safety in the way cars measure speed.
Have your own thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Good, bad, or in between. Have a chat with us by dropping a comment below.